All right, grade 7. We are continuing along here in lesson 5.4. We're looking at part B for lesson 5.4 here. And the first part of the instructions, we have 3 parts, all kind of the same thing, okay, but just different ways of doing it. It says determine how far the vehicle travels in 3 hours. So our first scenario is we have a plane that travels 180 miles in 2 hours. And our job is to figure out how far it goes in 3 hours. Well, I'm going to set it up as 180 miles in 2 hours equals x over 3 hours. Okay, so there's a variety of ways that I can do this and make it happen. Okay, I could do cross-checking, I could simplify it, but let's look at one way first. So let's look at cross-multiplying. The idea that 2 times x, which equals 2x, is going to equal the same as 3 times 180, okay? So 180 times 3, when I go and punch that into the calculator, all right, I should get 540, but let's make sure. 180 times 3 equals 540. There you go. All right. So we come up here. It equals 540. Now I know that to isolate x now, I'm just solving an equation. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. That's a multiplication equation, so I divide. I come down here, 540 divided by 2 equals 270. X equals 270 miles. It's not bad. All right, let's look at the second one here. A train travels 15 miles every 1/3 hour. So if it's going 15 miles every 1/3 hour, I don't really like fractions within fractions, but for the purpose of the scratch work and to display it, it's not a problem. But our job is to figure out how far the vehicle goes in 3 hours. So once again, we're going to have x over 3. Now I'm going to show another way to do this. I'm going to say, well, I want to know what I did to 1/3 to get 3. I know I multiplied because the number got bigger. So it's essentially 3 divided by 1 over 3. So I can figure out what I did. Well, it equals 9, okay? So I know here that I multiplied by 9, which means I have to do the same thing to the 15. I have to multiply it by 9. I'm going to come down here. A 9's already there, so I'm just going to punch in times 15. That equals 135. So I find that x equals 135 miles in the 3 hours. All right, so that's not terrible, okay? So that's just kind of how that rolls, all right? So let's look at the second part. Same sort of thing. Use the table to write a proportion, all right? Basically, all I'm going to ask you to do is to solve for y, okay? So you see that in the first game, 14 points, 16 shots. The second game, 21 points and an unknown number of shots. So I'm going to set this up as 14 over 16 equals 21 over y. All right, now another way to do this, and this one works out well. Now, I can always do the cross-checking. 14 times something isn't going to work great with 21 necessarily, but it could if I wanted to do 21 divided by 14. But I noticed that this fraction is not in simplest form, 14 over 16. And so this is another option in the sense that I can divide these both by 2, okay? And 14 divided by 2 is 7. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So my 14 over 16 actually simplifies down to 7 over 8. And amazingly, 7 works very good with 21 because 7 times 3 is 21, which means then that I can just do 8 times 3. And 8 times 3 tells me that y equals 24. All right, moving right along. Same sort of thing. proportion, how many miles you went today and how many hours, and then you know how many hours you did today. Your job is to figure out how many miles. All right, well, I'm going to set up a proportion again, and this proportion is going to be 45 over 7.5 equals x over 12. I don't know what that is. I need to figure it out. Now, 7.5 is not going to work real great with 12. 45 and 7.5, I mean, I could try to simplify that, but that's going to be kind of awkward because then you get decimals and things involved. So I'm just going to set this up as 7.5 times x. I'm going to go to the other method that I know can always work. 7.5x equals the same thing as 45 times 12. So I'm going to come over here, clear my calculator. 45 times 12. Well, that equals 540. So 75x equals 540, or 7.5x equals 540. Well, I need to isolate the x. I isolate the x by dividing both sides by 7.5. So I already have the 540 in there. I'm going to punch in divide by 7.5. That's going to equal 72. It tells me that x equals 72. And then it went 72 miles in 12 hours yesterday. All right, last part, different way of doing the same thing. Find the value of x so that the ratios are equivalent. Well, it gives us a ratio, 2 to 4 and x to 6. So I'm just going to set this up as 2 over 4 equals x over 6. Well, let's go ahead and cross multiply. 4 times x, 4x, 2 times 6, 12. Remember, cross multiplication is always those two and those two. So 4x, 4 times x equals 4x, 2 times 6 equals 12. 4x equals 12. This is old school now in 7th grade. I'm just going to divide both sides by 4, which tells me that x equals 3, which makes sense because 2 is half of 4 and 3 is half of 6. All right, here we go. X over 5 equals 8 over 2. Well, let's kind of think, all right? Let's think to ourselves, let's just kind of practice it another way. I see that this is not in simplest form. They're both even numbers, so I can divide them both by 2. When I do 8 divided by 2, 2 divided by 2, I'm going to end up, because 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 2 divided by 2 is 1, I'm going to end up with 4 over 1. Well, what did I do to 5 to get 1? Well, I divided by 5, which means coming this way, I multiplied by 5. Going that way, which means if I'm going that way up here, I have to multiply by 5. And 4 times 5, x equals 20. And that makes sense because if I do 20 here, 20 divided by 5 is 4. 4 divided by 1 is 4. All right, so when I say times 5, it's this number times 5 equals 20. 1 times 5 equals 5. All right, last one, 4 to 3 and 10 to x. So we're going to set this up as 4 over 3 equals 10 over x. Well, this is in simplest form. 4 does not work very well with 10, so I'm going to go with the old cross multiply. 4 times x is 4x. 10 times 3 equals 30. I have to isolate the variable by dividing both sides by 4. So I'm going to come in here, 30 divided by 4 equals 7.5. X equals 7.5. Now, that x equals 7.5, if you did it as 30 over 4, you would find that 4 could go into 37 times. There would be 2 left over because 7 times 4 is 28. The denominator's 4. That would simplify down to 7.5. That's also okay. But now at this point, if you were just to simplify this fraction and divide them both by 2, 30 divided by 2 is 15. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Mr. Swack would also accept 15 over 2 as an answer. These are all three ways of writing the same exact thing. All right, 7th graders. Talk to you later. Bye.